is the Apparelist podcast, designed to bring you real-life conversation about high-level topics relevant to the decorated apparel community.
Hello, Apparelist family, and welcome to the month of May. I say this every time we do a podcast. It feels like life is just flying by at this astronomical pace. I was just recording the April podcast, and this is crazy. But we are excited for this pace because it means spring is in the air and apparel decorators are hard at work printing and prepping those summer orders. And speaking of printing and prepping, you should also be paying attention to another word that begins with the letter P, and that word is profit. So I've had several conversations already this year about the ups and downs of the first quarter. Decorators have given us feedback on everything like, oh, it was a stellar first quarter, to, hey, it was kind of flat, but we did all right. However, one thing I continue to hear beyond just the first quarter of 2024 is this idea of profit versus revenue. And when I say that, I mean, we're hearing shops say, oh my gosh, my revenue is through the roof, but I'm not making a profit. And like, this is a theme that comes up time and time again. It's easy to focus on just one piece of the money puzzle, but the truth is your business won't grow and thrive sustainably without paying attention to the entire picture. So joining us this month for the Apparelist podcast is Nick Gawreluk. He is the founder of Print Profit. Nick is here to give us the skinny on real numbers, what shop owners should actually pay attention to, and offer some strategies to make sure your shop is in the right place financially. So Nick, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we've gotten to know each other over the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years already it's been. And every time you and I talk, Nick, I feel like I come with a great takeaway. So what better platform to have you educate our decorators than in the podcast?
It's an important topic, profitability. Obviously, we work really hard as shop owners and as an industry. And at the end of the day, we want something to show for it. So I can't wait to go through this conversation together. And for everyone listening in, we appreciate your time and keeping the conversation going.
That's right. And you know what? Let's just get into the conversation then. So in your opinion, or from what you've seen, why do you think so many apparel decorators focus on increasing revenue rather than like this big picture of like complete financial stability or net profit or all the big things? What seems to be the obsession with revenue?
Yeah, why is it not so easily an obsession on the profit side of things? No doubt about it, right? Profitability is critical. It's a huge topic, but as critical as it is, business owners of all different shapes and sizes in our industry, they really struggle to have a granular understanding of where their profit comes from. And even just the definition of what does a job cost me? And then you're selling it with hopes of getting a profit. And when that doesn't materialize, you're right, there's a lot of owners that will be pulling out their hair. So it's a topic that I think is misunderstood. A lot of the traditional definitions that we've had as an industry for almost 100 years, in my opinion, haven't really continued to evolve and be effective for us as shop owners. So it's, in summary, a topic that is a bit misunderstood, and I think there's huge room for clarity. So there can be that obsession of net profit, but when it is cloudy, yeah, sales is going to be a natural gravitation. That's what we can speak towards and push our teams to get more of.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you kind of pointed out it really hasn't like evolved as the industry has evolved. I don't know that I've really ever thought about it in that light before.
Yeah, I've studied it, bought on eBay books from 1890, 1900, 1910, 1920, every single decade. And printing companies have looked at those metrics the same way, and even just kind of manufacturing in general. And I'll spare folks the details, but like even in the academic world in the 70s, 80s, well-known Harvard professors were waving the flag saying, hey, this way of thinking isn't serving our industry effectively. And that's where a lot with what I'm passionate about in the industry is saying the solution to make it clear to understanding, it's not more complexity. We have enough of that. It's simplicity. And in that, that's where you're going to find truth and help you really see things 2020.
I love that. That actually leads me perfectly into my next question I had for you, which, what is so important, or why is it so important to understand maybe the simplicity of it, right? But just like understand that within the lens of your entire business plan.
Yeah. You mentioned business plan. A lot of companies do not set up annual business plans to begin with, right? And that can be a bit of flying off of a hope and a prayer. And I think step 101 is coming up with that plan. And with that plan, it sort of gives you the confines of, okay, you want to generate so much profit. Well, what does that mean for the sales you have to bring in? And then looking at the costs you have to control. And then day-to-day decisions in the shop. Do you want to take that job? Yes or no? Do you want that new shiny auto press, right? They all connect towards hopefully what is your year game plan? What are you strategically looking to achieve? And all those micro decisions either help or hurt you get to that goal at the end of the year.
Mm. And that's interesting, because it seems to me that when you're identifying those little like micro goals, there's probably like a decent amount of like actual numbers or like data attached to this, right? Like you should probably have some numbers attached to this. I'm having like reminiscent things coming back of like some video topics you've done for us on this before. So is there a healthy way to go about like identifying those numbers? Because like you mentioned, a lot of shops don't have this. So like where do they even start with these identifications?
Yeah, I like going back to keeping it simple, right? Even if you look at the year that you're in or the year ahead, saying, for the numbers, hopefully that you have available in your shop, can you look back at what history's taught you for sales, and your costs and your profit? And okay, what are your ambitions then for a certain period in the future? And with that information from the past, with what you know about your customers, your local market, your competitors, putting those two things together to have sort of an outline of this is what we want to bring in for sales. If we keep a close eye on our costs, we think this will generate this bottom line amount. And then with that as your North Star, that's really helping guide those decisions.
Yeah. So I kind of want to go back. I want to dissect that a little bit more. So you were talking about, okay, you've got some like past numbers that you could be looking at. There's other things you can be examining. Okay, so now, you're a decorator, you're looking at your numbers and you're like, man, I should be doing way better than this. Why am I not doing better? Where is the problem in your opinion, or your advice? Where do you even start identifying where the problem lies, numbers wise and financially wise?
Yeah, a simple way could just be what would be referred to as top down. So looking at that high level sales number, and then is that higher or lower than what was anticipated? And then for what you did sell, then the natural extension is now let's look at our costs compared to the amount that we sold. Is that in line with where we wanted to be or not? And that's just a simple high level way to say red flag or nope, that's not the problem. And then keep going lower and lower. It could be, yeah, you did buy a new press, or you took on more staff, and it may not be a function of you didn't sell enough or you produced it inefficiently. It could be your overhead. So just keeping it simple and looking one level after another. And another thing I like to add to this is you do have levers as a business owner.
Yes.
If you're not satisfied, or even if you are satisfied and you want to improve, right? I really love trying to empower owners to say there's creativity and ways in your business that you can drive it and not have the business driving you.
Mm-hmm. My goodness, we could spend hours like dissecting every piece of that, right? Because there's so much packed into what you just, it's simple, but there's also so much packed into what you just said that now I'm having visions of like future podcast episodes because we just won't have time today. But let's just pick out one piece. And you were talking about like pricing your products and pricing your services. And that's one area where things could be going wrong. So let's go that direction, just for sake of like having to pick a road, right? Robert Frost's road not taken poem, right? You got to pick a road. So talking about like that pricing strategy, let's go there. So let's first start with like the elephant in the room. Why is it a bad idea to race to the bottom with price matching? Why is that so bad?
Yeah, pricing is a fascinating topic. A lot of people ask for my opinion and they're looking for the silver bullet. And in my opinion, there is none. It is situational. And you have to look at it from different perspectives. So thinking about your question that you just asked, generally speaking, right?
Hmm.
You do play that race to the bottom game of matching, and then competitors match, and it's a step down, step down, step down. And if not controlled and having disciplined, you will see that price erosion. And then
Hmm.
your profits accordingly. And it's easier said than done, but that's the name of the game in business, is trying to stick to your guns and say, we bring value in these tangible areas and we can stand behind our price because we feel it reflects it. Easier said than done, but just doing price match and then setting that as the expectation for the customer, it can be a slippery slope. And there are also situations where that could be an effective foot in the door.
Oh, interesting. Have you ever, I'm curious, have you ever come across a situation where that has worked?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of different metrics, pulses in your business you want to keep an eye on. Thinking about your capacity, how busy or how slow are you? The reality is, we all know there are seasons and months where, there are people sitting around and the presses aren't
Mhm.
spinning as fast or at all. And then trying to think creatively of, we have these, great team members who we can't send home. We do have open capacity. Do we maybe cautiously want to consider a promotion or something like that? But I just emphasize on cautiously.
Cautiously, as in, again, look at the big picture, like look at your whole plan. It all comes back to like, don't just like make one singular decision, it seems like.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, interesting. Um, it's okay, so that was like kind of the part of it that we normally don't talk about, right? But let's go back to where, the problems lie with doing this sort of thing. Um, maybe you can use an example of where, specifically you talked about price erosion, but what are some other specific areas that this might negatively impact your shop? Price erosion, you may lose money, things like that. Can you think of any examples or give us any examples of where you've seen this tangibly like totally tank for somebody?
For some customers, you set the expectation from day one as you're building a partnership that you know, your strength or why they want to do business with you is that low price. It very well could be that you've now set that expectation towards the bottom and trying to climb back up if that's why they're doing business with you, and thinking about the customers you may or may not want to attract. And I think it's as equally as important the customers you don't want to work with strategically as the ones
Yeah.
you do. So do you want to attract all of bottom feeder customers who are shopping and quoting every way to Sunday? You got to think about that.
Oh, but yes, exactly. You got to set the expectation out of the gate that you are the shop to work with because you're good at what you do. Like, not necessarily about price. It's not because you offer the bottom price, because you offer a good quality product the customer's going to be proud to wear.
Exactly. There's so many different ways that you could stand behind and defend that price. And
Mhm.
that's where trying to find your niche or differentiator in the marketplace, it's really worth that search and journey, because it all ties back into your price and how do you show up.
I want to go back to something you said when we first started getting on this topic. You said everybody wants the silver bullet, and that is, I could not have said it better myself because it's true.
Do
Whenever
you
we
have it?
get,
I'm still
I,
looking for it.
I'm still looking for it too, but something tells me if we find the silver bullet, we are going to be rich beyond our wildest dreams. But until then, because we get asked this a lot too, right? A lot of reader submissions will come to us and say, hey, do you have like a white paper or like a pricing matrix that I can use? Things like that. And time and again, We and our expert team of content collaborators, such as yourself, make that same, like you point that same thing out. Like, hey, look, there's not like a one size fits all. There's not a silver bullet, that we have to look at so many different things in your shop. That being said,
Yep.
are there some pricing strategies, general pricing strategies that you say you should always have in your pocket, regardless of what kind of shop you are?
There's a lot of different tools in the toolkit. Just generally speaking, thinking about, like, let's set aside this specific strategy, but I'm always a big fan of, when thinking about pricing, you need to understand your costs, and that forms your understanding the context of that price, because profit. And then what will the market bear? What's the context of the customer, your competition? I really try to bring the best of both worlds into that decision making. And I think one without the other, you're really trading off a big component. It is putting those two things together, having that context and understanding to make the best decision possible in context of whatever the situation is. So I didn't give you yet a specific example, but just as a fundamental approach, you got to understand your costs. So when you're thinking about that price, you know what's left in it. Do you want to play the game or not? And then, okay, that's great that you came up with the price based off of your crazy Excel formula of your costs, but will the customer even buy it at that price? Because they're the ones at the end of the day who write the check. So just planting a seed of thinking about pricing decisions and strategies, you got to have both in mind.
One favorite piece of advice you love to just tell people, what would that be? It's so hard to pick one, and people hate this question, and I continue to ask it because it's always a fun one, right? So if there's one like big financial piece of advice, or just like one thing, if you're going to forget everything else you just said, remember this piece of advice.
In context of pricing, my advice would be know your costs.
Okay,
Know
there you
your
go.
costs, because if you know your costs, thinking about the price you're going to sell, you know what's left over for profit. And that's your North Star.
I love that simplicity.
Trying.
There it is, people. You heard it. All right, Nick, we keep these pretty short and sweet, but I know people are going to have questions for you, or may want to connect with you. They may want to pick your brain more. They might want to learn what Print Profit is all about. So where do people find you?
Yeah, appreciate you asking. You can find Print Profit at printprofit.com. And for anyone interested in reaching out, Nick at printprofit.com will also do.
Easy. I love it. And also, for all of you apparelist listeners out there, if you haven't done so already, Nick has done a couple of video projects for us where he really gives some great visual guidelines on some simple financial things that you all can be doing in your shop now. It's not going to require some big extra cost. It's not going to require like 10 million hours to implement. Like, Nick's got some great simple things. So please go to apparelist.com, search for Nick. We'll also provide plenty of links in the show notes. Guys, this is a topic that gets talked about time and time again, but time and time again gets ignored. Doesn't need to be ignored. You heard it from Nick. It's not super difficult. This isn't crazy. This isn't rocket science. Let's make everybody more profitable. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the time.